Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Mariancho, and it's Saturday, so it's time for all of the injury updates and player news across the league. After all of these important notes, I will give you my final updated rankings at all 5 positions. I'm also going to make a couple changes for my win-loss picks, but before we jump in, let's remind you of all the healthy rosters in the NFL. If you have any Baltimore Ravens, any Chicago Bears, any Cincinnati Bengals, any New York Jets, or Seattle Seahawks, all of those players on offense are healthy. They're not on the injury report, and you don't have to worry. They are good to go in week 5. But let's begin in Arizona, where Trey McBride has cleared the concussion protocol, but is still listed as questionable due to a ribs injury. I expect him to play, but it's not ideal. It did crop up late in the week, and that's never a good sign. But I think he'll be all right. I think he will suit up, and I do still rank him as the tight end 1. In Buffalo, though, Khalil Shakir has been ruled out, a bit of a surprise, and that means Keon Coleman looks like their number 1 wide receiver. Curtis Samuel might actually look relevant for once. But I think this is a main upgrade for Dalton Kincaid and James Cook. The offense will be a bit narrower, and they will score a lot of points. I think Kincaid definitely finds the end zone. He is a lock in your lineup this week. In Carolina, though, they're playing it safe with Jonathan Brooks. He is yet to practice this week, and he remains on IR. He is out in this game. Chuba Hubbard is a lock in your lineup. In Cleveland, though, Nick Chubb also unavailable this week. They're playing it safe. While he has resumed practice, he is not stepping back on the field. David Njoku, the tight end, is questionable. Njoku is dealing with an ankle injury that has held him out for a few games, and he is a game time decision. He's about 50-50 to play. Last week, they only let him practice on one day of the week, on Thursday. He rested Wednesday, Friday, and this week, it was the other way around. He rested Thursday, but was limited on Wednesday and Friday. So maybe he's ready to go. Maybe they want to give him one more chance to be full in practice before they let him go. I'm not totally sure if Njoku will play. He's a game time decision. Monitor his status. If he does play, then Jerry Jeudy is a bit less interesting. In Dallas, though, Brandin Cooks has been placed on IR. He has an infection in his knee, and he will miss at least 4 games, which makes Jalen Tolbert a much safer option, but probably not safe enough to still start. It is a gamble, very touchdown dependent, and overall, I think Jake Ferguson is just a lot safer in this offense. In Denver, though, Audric Estime remains on IR for at least one more week. He might return as soon as week 6, and there is a backfield that's up for grabs. Estime might be interesting off the waiver wire starting next week. In Green Bay, a lot of weird situations going on. Luke Musgrave is questionable. He did not practice, but they're not ruling him out yet. I do not think he will play. Christian Watson, I also do not think will play. He's doubtful, and I think he'll miss at least 1 or 2 games. But unfortunately for Romeo Doubs, he is not going to capitalize on this added volume because he stepped away from the team due to a personal matter. He did not practice on Friday, and now the team has suspended him for conduct detrimental to the team. So very odd to see from Doubs. You expect him to get more volume, but he's complaining about his role in the offense. He is not satisfied, and he may be demanding a trade soon, but I don't know what's going on. At least for a fact, he is not playing. He is suspended for week 5. Dontavian Wicks and Bo Melton get an upgrade. But I also think Tucker Kraft really benefits from this situation. A very consolidated offense means a lot more targets for the only tight end who will get legitimate snaps and run actual routes. So Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, and Tucker Kraft all get an upgrade. I also think Josh Jacobs is a bit more likely to score a touchdown finally this year. In Houston, though, Joe Mixon is out for the 3rd straight game, but Dameon Pierce might make his return to the field. Questionable, was limited in practice on Friday, a game time decision. I do not know if he'll play or not. If he does, that would really impact Cam Akers and Dare Ogunbowale. Neither are really safe regardless, but you definitely are not trusting either of them. If Dameon Pierce does suit up, he would be the RB1, close to a workhorse in this Texans offense. So not sure if he plays, but is looking a little bit more likely. We'll find out. On Sunday, they do play in the morning, and maybe Dameon Pierce is a good pickup. I think he'd be probably a top 20 option if he does get the start in Houston. In Indianapolis, though, as expected, Jonathan Taylor is out, so Trey Sermon gets an upgrade, and Anthony Richardson, the quarterback, is doubtful. It looks like Joe Flacco will be the quarterback this week, and that means Michael Pittman, Josh Downs are far safer. They're legit plays in week 5. They are kind of unavailable when Richardson is the quarterback for fantasy purposes. So good news for them. Weird news regarding Richardson at quarterback. In Jacksonville, though, I think Evan Engram is going to play. He's questionable and was limited all week in practice. I think he will return to the field and help out Trevor Lawrence, an important target in that offense. Looks like he's going to return. In Kansas City, though, Rashee Rice, as expected, was placed on IR. He'll miss at least 4 games, but it could genuinely be the entire season. CEH, though, may make his return next week, but for now, he is doubtful, not expected to come off of IR. Despite practicing limited this week, they are not ready to activate him, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire will remain sidelined once again. But Kareem Hunt removed from the injury report. He was full in practice on Saturday, and he is the RB1 for the Chiefs this week. In LA, as expected for the Rams, Cooper Kupp is out. Puka Nacua still on IR, and we'll see who comes back after their week 6 bye. They might both return in week 7. In Las Vegas, Davante Adams is out with that hamstring injury, but I think he's played his last game for Las Vegas. He has requested a trade. For now, he's still a Raider, but I don't think he plays for Las Vegas ever again. Zamir White, though, bit of a shocker, is out this week, and that means Alexander Mattison will probably be the main focal point in the backfield, but I also expect Amir Abdullah to catch some passes, and maybe Dylan Laube, the rookie out of New Hampshire, to also get some work. Laube is a player I liked a lot this offseason. He has some upside also in the passing game. They also are without Michael Mayer, so maybe Brock Bowers is forced to block a little bit more. 3 injuries in the Raiders offense making an impact. In Miami, Raheem Mostert is active, so Devon Achane is a little bit less safe. He already wasn't the safest play without Tua, but now it's a little bit more complicated in this backfield. We're not totally sure who will score the touchdown, if there is one at all available. But from an NFL standpoint, Mostert being active does help their offense. In Minnesota, though, TJ Hawkinson did practice in limited capacity on Friday, but is not going to play in London. He is out, and he'll also miss week 6 on bye. So maybe he returns in week 7, but he is trending in the right direction. Hawkinson might be back at tight end pretty soon. In New England, though, weird situation with Rhamondre Stevenson. He's active, he's fully healthy, but he may have lost his job to Antonio Gibson. Reports indicate that Gerard Mayo is benching him. He at least is not the starter. He should play this week. I don't think he'll have no touches at all, but it looks like Gibson gets the start, and it'll probably favor him a little bit more in this backfield. So maybe it's a 50-50 split. Maybe it heavily favors Gibson, but it's really bad news for Rhamondre Stevenson. It was a good matchup, and now you can probably not start him with confidence. I don't think Rhamondre is a good play anymore. But Kendrick Bourne looks to make his season debut coming off of IR. He is questionable, but was limited all week in practice, and that just makes any Patriots receiver that less likely to find your lineup. It's very hard to trust any singular player. In New Orleans, though, Taysom Hill is out, and maybe Kendre Miller gets some more touches in the backfield. He is expected to make his debut this season. He was full in practice this week. He will come off of IR. In New York for the Giants, however, Malik Nabers out with a concussion. I'm not sure this helps Wan'Dale Robinson, actually, because he will get a lot more focus from the defense, and he is not that alpha receiver. The volume might actually come down without Nabers on the field because Wan'Dale won't be as wide open. They're also likely without Devin Singletary. He is doubtful for this game, and that basically means he will not play. So Tyrone Tracy is the RB1 for the Giants. Maybe he has some value this week. I would consider picking him up as an interesting desperation flex option in week 5. In Pittsburgh, though, Jaylen Warren is out once again, and so is Cordarelle Patterson. So Najee Harris gets this backfield mostly to himself. Aaron Shamplin is the backup, but Justin Fields is there, always available to vulture those touchdowns. Najee gets a bit of an upgrade, but still not the safest play in your lineup. The last 2 teams are San Francisco, where Christian McCaffrey remains on IR, but George Kittle is questionable. He did not practice Wednesday or Thursday, but was limited on Friday. with a rib injury. I do expect him to play. He's a game time decision, but I'm kind of optimistic about Kittle. All in all, that only helps Brock Purdy in general. You'd be a bit more confident in the receivers if he didn't play, but I do think Kittle will be on the field. Lastly, though, in Washington, Brian Robinson Jr. is questionable, and he did miss practice Wednesday and Thursday with a knee injury, but he was limited on Friday, and I do think he will play. He's trending in the right direction, and while it's not ideal, I still think you're starting him. However, Austin Ekeler gets an upgrade. He is active. He is cleared the concussion protocol, and he will play. He did look pretty solid in this backfield before going down. So Ekeler is very interesting. Brian Robinson loses a bit of value. So those are all of the injury updates. Now let's jump into my rankings at running back, where I did make some changes. In the top 10, there's one player moving up the board, and that would be Josh Jacobs, now my RB10. With all of the injuries to the receivers and tight ends in Green Bay, I think Jacobs is a lot more likely to finally score a touchdown. That has not happened for him this year. That's the main reason he's not been safe. But from a floor standpoint, he's good for 10 points, and I think he's a lot more likely to find the end zone. In the red zone, he will get more touches with fewer options overall in the offense. So the consolidation, 4 touches, really helps him and does make him more appealing. A top 10 play, I think he finally finds the end zone this season. But I swapped him straight up 1-for-1 with Brian Robinson Jr. He moves down 3 spots due to his injury and Ekeler being active. But I still think Brian Robinson has played too well for you to bench. At RB13, I still think he's one of the bigger workhorses on the week, and I still think his odds at a touchdown are very high. So love Brian Robinson still. I think as long as he's active, he's still a top 15 running back. Still a must start in your lineup. I did take out Joe Mixon though, so that's why DeAndre Swift moves up 1 spot, but I lowered my tune on Devon Achane, who gets jumped by both Travis Etienne and Najee Harris. They both feel a little bit safer than Achane, who now has to compete with Mostert. The touchdowns are a little less likely, and they were already pretty slim to come by without Tua in this offense already. So not ideal with Achane. I think you're a bit worried about it, but his talent and workhorse capabilities do keep him in the top 20. I still think you're starting Achane, but you're not as excited with Mostert on the field. I do think Kareem Hunt is a very legit RB2 though. With no CEH, you're more comfortable starting him, and he is cleared. He was questionable earlier in the week, but he was full in practice on Saturday, and he is the RB1 in Kansas City. So he's my favorite guy there. I think if you're starting any Chiefs running back, it would be Kareem Hunt this week. Right behind Kareem Hunt, though, at RB19, I have Trey Sermon at Jacksonville, who I think is going to get maybe like 75+% of the touches. I really don't worry about Tyler Goodson. I don't think anybody else really factors in. And the fact that Anthony Richardson is no longer the quarterback this week, I do think really increases the touchdown odds for Trey Sermon. So Flacco's not going to vulture him. Sermon looks a lot safer, and the matchup against Jacksonville is very good. So I like Trey Sermon this week, filling in for Jonathan Taylor. I think he's a legit RB2, low-end, top 20 play. The position is so ugly this week, and the matchup is worth chasing after. I think Sermon's volume will keep him viable for a double-digit floor. And the same applies with Dameon Pierce, in my opinion. I think if he is active, he is the Texans running back to start. I would not feel safe with Cam Akers or Dare Ogunbowale, and I could legitimately see 70+% of the touches going to Pierce. He could be a workhorse, but it's not a guarantee he plays. If he is activated last minute, I would pivot to him if I was relying on like Cam Akers to replace Joe Mixon. So with a lot of injuries and players on bye this week, I do think both Trey Sermon and Dameon Pierce are top 20 options this week. Feels kind of risky, but go ahead and roll them out there if you're desperate enough. I still don't love the matchup for Zach Moss and Chase Brown. Along with the committee, I'm worried about who to trust here, but they're probably the last guys you actually believe in, given their track record this season. Moss has looked good. The volume is comparable for both lately, and Chase Brown scored 2 touchdowns last week. I do think you could do a lot worse than the Bengals running backs in your lineup, but I do prefer Kareem Hunt, Trey Sermon, and Dameon Pierce. I think it'll be less of a committee for those 3 players, but they are top 22, followed by Antonio Gibson, who moves up 11 spots in my rankings because Rhamondre Stevenson is no longer the starter. Rhamondre moves down 7 spots, and I do have Gibson and Rhamondre ranked back to back, but I think it's kind of the same as Bucky Irving, Rashad White, very touchdown dependent, and it's hard to bet on who will actually score. It's a very good matchup for both of them, though, so it's possible they do find the end zone. But I really don't know who will be the volume guy. Like, it could be Gibson, it could be Rhamondre. I really don't know what's going to happen in this backfield this week. So very unsafe with Rhamondre. Gibson looks a lot more appealing, and if he has stolen this job, he might be a great pickup off the waiver wire for the remainder of the year. But with Gibson moving up, I did bump down Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. They get jumped, but it's all kind of the same opinion for players after this point. While yes, Alexander Mattison is more enticing without Zamir White, he's still only RB28, moving up 2 spots. I kind of view him identically to how I saw him before, where he's the more likely guy to score a touchdown. It's still probably a committee. I do think Dylan Laube and maybe Amir Abdullah catch some passes, and this offense kind of sucks in the first place. There's limited touchdown viability already. So good luck with Mattison. He's RB28 for me, but probably not a must start in general. You could probably do better. I'd rather pivot to Sermon or Dameon Pierce, but I do think Tyrone Tracy is interesting as well. With no Devin Singletary, he's doubtful this week. The offense is going to be bad, especially without Malik Nabers, but Tracy will probably see 15 plus touches as their RB1. So he's top 30. You could do worse if you're desperate, but only if you're trying to replace one of your low-end options that's now out. Like if you have to go with Tracy to replace Singletary, I get it. Good luck to you. I'd rather not do it, though. I don't like this matchup against Seattle. But Austin Ekeler, I think, is a legit flex play as well. Probably one of the last you'd consider. He has looked good this season, and with the injury to Brian Robinson Jr., maybe he gets more snaps. Maybe B-Rob aggravates it and does not finish the game. Maybe Ekeler turns into a workhorse. So that's what you're kind of hoping for, but kind of unlikely he pays off. This is probably the cutoff point at running back. But Rico Dowdle moves down 2 spots. He gets jumped by Tracy and Ekeler. Cam Akers, I think, would probably be a player you can't start at all if Dameon Pierce does play. If he doesn't, I would rank him here, and I think Dare Ogunbowale would be a very annoying player as well. So no thank you with Akers at all this week. I think even if Dameon Pierce does not suit up, I don't think Akers would crack my top 30. But Javonte Williams gets jumped. He moves down 3 spots. So does Braylon Allen. And the last player to mention would be Raheem Mostert, who I now have as RB 41. Even though he's active, I have no confidence in this offense scoring touchdowns, and I would not start him. He's my running back 41 this week, and I am avoiding the Dolphins backfield if I can. It's only A-Chain who I would consider. So that's the update at running back. A lot of players moving around just a couple spots, a lot of players being taken out and coming back into the mix. Things are moving at running back. Let's pivot to wide receiver now, where I did make a few changes, but for the most part, everybody moves up 1 spot because Malik Nabers was previously my wide receiver 5, and now he can't start him. He's out with a concussion. So that's the reason for these players moving up 1 spot in the top 10. But I think with Joe Flacco starting, I think Michael Pittman literally is a must start, moves up 30 spots due to the change in quarterback. You just trust all of those checkdowns to hit. You're also not getting any rush attempts from the quarterback, and that does make the offense look a lot different, a lot safer in the passing game. So Pittman is night and day with Flacco at quarterback. He's way more valuable as opposed to Richardson. You actually trust what you're getting from Pittman. So with some weird matchups for other players and an excellent matchup here against Jacksonville, I actually think Pittman is a top 10 play this week. I think you have to start him if you have him with Flacco at quarterback. So he enters the top 10. A couple other guys stay put like Deontay and Stephon Diggs, but I did lower Brian Thomas Jr. 3 spots in the rankings because Evan Engram is probably going to suit up. I think that's less volume for Brian Thomas Jr. The touchdown might be less likely as well. I still think he's a top 20 play. I'm still starting him, but I don't have him top 15 anymore because Engram likely suits up. So that impacts him a little bit. I also lowered Garrett Wilson in the rankings as well. I think he's less safe just because of his track record this season. He has been a bit of a letdown. So worried about the Vikings matchup. The Vikings defense has played well, and there is a chance that he gets shut down once again. So I just don't trust Garrett Wilson as much. And as someone who rosters Dontavian Wicks, Brian Thomas Jr., and Garrett Wilson, I'm actually starting Dontavian Wicks this week over Garrett Wilson. So if that's what I'm going to do in my PPR league, I should have the rankings reflect it as well. I think it's very close, but I'd rather trust Dontavian Wicks with all of the receivers injured in Green Bay. So these three are the main changes in the low end of the top 20. The two players moving down are the reason why these other guys move up 2 spots. DJ Moore through Amari Cooper move up 2 spots. Dontavian Wicks, though, far, far safer without Romeo Doubs. And I already ranked him 21. I think he's a top 20 play this week. I love Dontavian Wicks this week. I think he's a must start in your lineup. Outside the top 20, I do have T. Higgins getting jumped by Dontavian Wicks and Michael Pittman, so he moves down 2 spots overall. But we did take out Khalil Shakir, who was previously my wide receiver 24. So these players move up 1 spot, and then they also jump Zay Flowers, so that's why they move up 2 spots. My opinion is the same on them, but I'm less excited about Zay Flowers. He's put up some duds the last 2 games, and I think his risk level is actually pretty high. I don't think you feel as safe starting Zay Flowers anymore. So I think I was just too high earlier in the week. He moves down 5 spots, and that's why these other players move up 2. They also jump Khalil Shakir, who gets taken out of the rankings entirely. But I think Josh Downs gets a massive upgrade with Joe Flacco at quarterback. He's now my wide receiver 30 this week, and I think he's a very safe flex play. I could expect 9+ targets for Downs this week, and maybe a touchdown as well. I think Flacco makes him so much safer at the position. You know you're getting a safe option with Flacco at quarterback. So he's now a top 30 wide receiver, moves up 20 spots overall. And with no Khalil Shakir, I think Keon Coleman deserves an upgrade as well. He moves up 11 spots. He's now my wide receiver 31. A very legit flex play. Could score a touchdown, looked pretty good last week. And I do think he's the number 2 target in this offense behind Dalton Kincaid. So Keon Coleman, very legit wide receiver 31 this week. Could be in your lineup if you need him. He jumps Christian Kirk, so Kirk moves down 1 spot. And I think Tyreek Hill was a little bit too low in my rankings earlier in the week. So I bumped him up 5 spots, previously wide receiver 38, now number 33. And while I don't love him, I'm a little bit less enticed with some of the players behind him, especially like Wan'Dale Robinson, Xavier Legette, still kind of shaky. Tank Dell, also risky. And then Jordan Addison, limited volume for him. So Tyreek Hill, just too talented to kind of dismiss. Now wide receiver 33. Kind of the cutoff point, though, at wide receiver. I actually like Wan'Dale Robinson less without Malik Nabers. I worry about the defense shutting him down. He's not going to be anywhere near as open as he was when Nabers was on the field. So a bit of changes inside the top 40, but outside the top 40, I do have Lockett moving up 1 spot as some players get taken out. And I do think Jalen Tolbert is a lot more interesting without Brandin Cooks. He's a safer play, but at wide receiver 41, still probably not the safest guy to actually plug into your lineup. He's still touchdown dependent. Same applies with Tutu Atwell, but he's been playing pretty good lately, so I thought I was a little too low on him earlier in the week. I upgraded him 6 spots. And then I also think as I downgrade Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams becomes a bit more appealing. He moves up 7 spots now, wide receiver 47 in this offense. But Darius Slayton, Bo Melton, and Curtis Samuel all enter the rankings because some players get taken out above them. I wouldn't start them, but I think in daily and DFS, they do become very interesting as cheap contrarian options that will not be rostered very much. So go ahead and get the discount there if you really want it, but in season long, I would not be starting them in my lineup. And then inside the top 60, I did add Trey Tucker, DJ Turner, and Jalen Hyatt. They move up inside the top 60, but also very risky options overall. So wide receiver and running back change a lot this week. There are a lot of moving parts. However, the only change at quarterback would be taking out Anthony Richardson and upgrading Joe Flacco as a top 12 quarterback. I already ranked him because I thought maybe he could play mid-game if Richardson doesn't stay healthy. And at quarterback 22, now he's looking like a far safer option. He moves up 10 spots. Quarterback 12, I'd rather start Flacco this week than Joe Burrow. The Jags are the number 1 quarterback matchup in fantasy this season. So love Flacco's floor. I think he's very safe, and the upgraded matchup makes him a top 12 play. I think he'll put up a similar stat line to maybe Baker Mayfield. At tight end, though, there is one major change, and that would be Tucker Kraft moving up 9 spots because now Romeo Doubs is out as well. I already knew that Luke Musgrave wasn't going to play. It made him a top 15 option, but now without Doubs, he is locked into at least 6 targets this week, I think. I think Tucker Kraft is very legit. He played well as the tight end 1 last year without Musgrave, and I do trust his volume. I think he'll be very safe as Musgrave, Christian Watson, and Romeo Doubs are not on the field. So some Packers backups really get elevated this week. Some very good matchups loom for them, and there's a lot more trustworthy volume headed in their direction. So love Tucker Kraft this week. I think he's a must start, a top 6 tight end. I actually prefer Evan Engram now over David Njoku, so I swapped the two. Engram stays put, Njoku moves down 2 spots, and everybody else moves down 1 as Tucker Kraft jumps over them. So I would definitely pick up Kraft off the waiver wire if you need help at tight end. I think he's a very legit play. Just like last week, I think he's top 10 in week 5. Lastly, though, at defense, I swapped the Colts and the Jaguars. I think the Colts win this game, and that means they'll give up fewer points than the Jags defense, but they're still both back-to-back. So these are all the updates in my rankings for quarterbacks, tight ends, and defense. I'll leave it here on the screen a little bit longer. You can pause it and make the lineup decisions, but for the most part, I think now you're starting Joe Flacco, especially as a handcuff option to Anthony Richardson. You're also starting Tucker Kraft, and then defense, you're starting the top 13, 14 options. But now on the screen are my flex rankings, my running back ranks in the top 40, as well as my wide receiver ranks. And I think once you hit Zach Moss, Chase Brown, I think that's the cutoff point at running back. You're really not excited about the floor or ceiling after that point, and I think you'd rather pivot to wide receiver. But it gets really disgusting, honestly, after Tyreek Hill. It is very hard to trust, and you're pretty much just hoping for a touchdown, and it's unlikely to hit most of the time. So I would be starting the top 22 running backs, the top 33 wide receivers, and overall trying to bench everyone else unless I need to. If I'm without running backs on bye or injured this week, then I will pivot to guys like Dameon Pierce, Trey Sermon, or Tyrone Tracy, Alexander Madison, maybe even Austin Ekeler. Running back is gross this week. Good luck with Rhamondre. Maybe Antonio Gibson offers some value as well. But that's going to be it for the rankings update. Go ahead and pause it if you still need it. But lastly, I am making some changes to my win-loss predictions. I think with Flacco under center, the Colts offense looks way more trustworthy, and I actually believe they will score points in Jacksonville. While they have lost 9 straight, that is probably due for a change, and the Jags have not looked good this season. So even though they're getting Evan Engram back, I will trust Flacco. I think the Colts win. I do think they're a playoff team this season, and beating up on a bad team like this is how they get there. I will take the Colts on the road over Jacksonville, their first win in Jacksonville in 10 years. But I'm also changing my pick on the Patriots. I think the Patriots will actually win at home. I do not trust the Dolphins offense at all. I made this pick before I watched them play on Monday last week, and I don't think the Huntley offense is something to buy into. I think Miami will struggle to score more than 20 points, and the Patriots at home off a mini bye will show up. So I like the Patriots to win. I think in an upset here, I'm going to go with New England over Miami. I'm also switching to the Colts on the road over Jacksonville. I think with Flacco, they are the better team. But those are the only 2 games I'm pivoting from. And while I'm very tempted to take the Steelers instead of the Cowboys, I'm actually just going to change my pick against the spread. I don't feel that confident that the Cowboys actually win. So instead, I'm going to take the Saints plus 5.5. I think these points are very tempting to buy into because the Chiefs offense is bad this season, and they're not winning by blowout. They're winning in very close 1-score games, and I think they do it on the back of their defense. It'll be a similar situation where they fail to score much more than 20 points, and the Saints do keep it close. It will be a 1-touchdown type of game. So I actually think the Saints could win straight up, but they're getting 5.5 points. I do think they cover and lose by about a field goal. I'll take the Saints plus 5.5 instead of Dallas against the spread. So that's it for this video. All of my changes, updated rankings, updated win-loss picks, and injury updates. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content. Go ahead and answer some polls on my channel page. The community tab has a lot of questions for you to fill out, and I'll see you on Monday. We'll find out how week 5 plays out. But that's it for me. My name is Adam Riancho, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.